Right before release, I put out a video for Assassin's Creed Shadows, countering the narratives of ignorant grifters angry that a series with a precedent of racial awareness and capable women included such racial awareness and a capable woman. It's an unusual video for me, in that it's bereft of my usual gags, barring the satire that made it into the thumbnail. This one will probably feel thematically much like a sequel to that one, even though the topic does not have to be beyond just a quick check-in. As suspected, now that I've completed playing the game, Shadows is not some radical leftist manifesto, as soulless commentators wanted you to believe a year ago. It does reflect on themes of Yasuke being an outsider, racially and culturally, especially at first, before those do settle back to general series tropes. Justified in the story in the way his reputation changes, both with the status as Nobunaga's samurai and just in the way people quit shit-talking you when your stealth takedown involves you strolling up and decapitating someone. And then only towards the end do the prejudices pick back up again a little, due to heavily dealing with the Portuguese and their period-accurate, heavier racial biases. I think they handled these elements well, and could have gotten even more heavily into it, and it still would have been justified. Naoe takes it a step further. More in line with Odyssey, the likelier sexism of the day gets broadly brushed past and glossed over. So there's not really even something here to offend the sensibilities of that particular distinction of bigot. As I guessed before, correctly, the wokeness was the audacity to say that it's fine for black people and women to do things in this series. So we can shelve that manufactured concern. I'm sure those grifters have moved on to greener pastures to shit all over. But what did I think about Assassin's Creed Shadows? That is sort of the crux of those other conversations. That bad faith arguments too easily distract from a proper reflection on the experience actually present. My timing here was not for dramatic reflection. It did take me the year since release, coming back to the game throughout to beat it. This is not entirely on the game. As a busy adult who does not play games nor make YouTube videos for his full-time job, under the best of conditions, a game of standard open-world RPG length was going to be a longer process regardless. And 2025 was not the best of conditions, personally, to make the biggest understatement of my life. Far more of this delay came from things that led to my PTSD diagnosis than anything Shadows did and did not do. But there still is a sliver that can be pointed back to Shadows. In my near absentia the second half of last year, I completed other Assassin's Creed games long before I could muster myself to finish Shadows. I played all of Nexus, to great enjoyment, without diversion for playing any other game in the mix. I did consider reviewing it as a standalone video, but the things I want to cover line up so closely with the things I'll cover someday anyway for a briefish history, that it felt better to just let that playthrough be for me. I then also played Assassin's Creed Unity Arno's Chronicles, a strange and janky little Java game port, which will get a video should my depression not defeat another project and will be available for patrons early should my depression not defeat another project. I was getting more out of that than I was out of Shadows. Clearly, something has gone very, very wrong. Bluntly, Assassin's Creed Shadows as a game feels like it exists for committee by committee. Normally I'd be considerate of spoilers for a more general review like this, but it doesn't really feel like anything in Shadows rises to the level of a spoiler in the first place. Story and gameplay are just going through the motions, in a way that feels more and more unsustainable for the series. Gameplay is the far guiltier party for leaving me unhooked. The RPG turn for the series, once an attempt to breathe life back into things with Origins, has so quickly collapsed back into suffocation, at least for me as a long-term player. We've seen exactly 4 entries in this style. I enjoyed unambiguously the first 2 of them, though admittedly with inklings of diminishing returns starting to peek out as early as Odyssey. Valhalla was a huge dip, a promising opening, and a surprisingly excellent ending still inducing burnout from dozens of hours of pointless bloat in between, and a dreary and unengaging open world stringing it all together. Those and Shadows were even given a breather with Mirage in between as a focused, old-school series experience. I genuinely cannot say whether this helped Shadows, having had a respite from level grinding and padding, or harmed shadows, as it reminded me what we could be getting from a series I've been playing loyally for more than half of my life now. Regardless, none of the new mechanics felt like they justified playing another generic action RPG. More elaborate combat systems involve breaking armor, theoretically could have been more implemented to make things more skill-based, but instead just serve to make fights slower and enemies spongier. Likewise, stealth may be more technically deep, with lighting playing a larger role, and the ability to go all the way prone to increase more movement options. But as often as combat just became mandatory, imposed in cutscenes, and requiring you duel it out regardless of who you chose to play as, it doesn't really matter enough to tip the scales. Parkour is back to being practically nothing. Additional gameplay mechanics are 60-second diversions at best. You'll be doing the same gameplay loop of maybe doing some stealth for a bit, and then guaranteed combat, in between egregious beef gating and an open world that almost always becomes impassable if you try to go off the path. It becomes far too linear to mesh with this style of game. An engaging gameplay system deepens as you go and learn new things, and have new tools for new challenges. None of Shadow's new options ever gave me that feeling. Marginally tweaking numbers, or introducing the same cooldown abilities I feel like I've seen in too many games for years now. It reeks of the Gotham Knights problem, getting worse as corporations get lazier and lazier to churn out products they think will check the boxes to profitability, no soul required. I think that's the only reason they added a base building mechanic, but I spent so little time at the base that I legitimately only built the necessary steps to progress in the story and never once missed the rest. In what feels like such a backwards notion, I found myself choosing the options to make the experience shallower as the game dragged on. Because it was clear I could either get through it more quickly, or I wouldn't get through it at all. I turned investigations down to just give a marker to go to, turned on guaranteed assassinations, and kept lowering the difficulty to get over it all faster. The game couldn't hook me for so many hours with these elements on, so all I could do was try and expedite the ending's arrival by turning them off. Neither giving it my best nor giving it my worst could awaken any interest in more generic action RPG gameplay. And the part of me hoping there would be some Valhallian final section that at least raised the game to having story moments worth seeing were let down. I won't drag Yasuke or Naue as characters, as I could empathize with both from fairly early on, and they are fortunately likable characters. And I won't even drag those earlier portions of the story that did involve Oda Nobunaga. I guess this is the biggest thing the story could consider a spoiler. Oh well and sorry. But the game doesn't take the easiest option of just making him a conspiratorial villain out for dominating the people as the series concept could so easily do. He's still a brutal conqueror who creates much early game strife. And he's not really, good. But he's far more complex and nuanced than just being a Templar. Now, the game tips its hand way too quickly that the actual conspirators are using trickery to remove him from the board, but it's still at least a more interesting wrinkle than the rest of the conspiracy. See, the rest of the conspiracy plot felt pretty shallow. The moment the Shinbakufu stroll in wearing masks in a big line, it was clear the game was just going to recycle the same tropes as every other RPG-era conspiracy. And the moment it was clear Naue has no context for the Assassin Brotherhood beyond being given one of their blades, it kind of stung in its redundancy. These games have been moving too far away from the Assassin Brotherhood for far too many entries now. There were varying levels of justification in the other RPG games to not depict the Brotherhood so directly, but this one is having to work harder to make a worse excuse to keep doing it. This game is less than a century after the Ezio games, and Naue even uses a rope dart, which unambiguously becomes global assassin equipment, thanks to Xiao Jun in that same less than a century ago. I can't even say the game is just trying to back away from its roots, because once I finally got through the arduous process of hunting down all of the Shinbakufu, it turns out they aren't even the Templars or Templar adjacent. There is then another conspiracy wheel added to the board for Yasuke to take down a few Templars and further drag the end credits a few hours away from you. Nowhere in any of this game is anything new or noteworthy. There's not really anything added to Assassin's Creed here in the big picture. We're teetering on Assassin's Creed Unity levels of, that changed nothing. How did visiting these memories help? I only say teetering because sequels could technically pick up some threads, as the only modern portions are now building up some sort of ambiguously evil animus AI. But as often as this series abandons setups, I'm not holding my breath. Despite the last two games setting up so much mystery and intrigue around Basim, there is zero follow-up on Basim here. Guess we will still have to wait. When Naoe does discover information about the Assassin Brotherhood that had existed and got wiped out recently in Japan, it doesn't link things back in or flesh out new information at any point. She is like, neat, they are kind of just like the new organization I founded. Guess we'll consider ourselves them now. When there's a great mystery put into a box taken by the Shinbakufu, implying some possibility of Isu artifact, it anticlimactically goes nowhere, just being the Imperial Regalia, a series of real-world artifacts that aren't allowed to be seen by the public. Now, I don't know the cultural weight of what would have been showing them, let alone making them something else like a piece of Eden, though I will confess that the general notion of special secret real-life items the dirty plebeians don't get to see, only special lineage gets to see, rubs me the wrong way in a few ways, but that's not a topic for Shadows. What is a topic of question is why they set up and foreshadowed the idea that this was going to be something more significant. I personally can't help but suspect a plotline was changed later in development, and so they just went with the answer that wouldn't require creating additional assets for. I don't know my exact amount of time spent in the story of this game. I'd guess 40 to 50 hours, ignoring quite a lot of side content by the end stretch. But I do know that only a tiny fraction of that time felt worthwhile. It was, time-wise, more forgiving than the excess of 70 hours it took to reach Valhalla's ending, but Valhalla at least got there feeling like it was just doing too many story chapters that did feel a little more distinct. Burnout happened so much faster for me in Shadows than even in Valhalla, and I am not a huge defender of that game. Here, it just gave so little reason for me to care about anyone not in Naoe or Yasuke's immediate circle. It gave little reason for me to care about most of those people too, and it's all just so slow. Conversations are slow and reveal little, perhaps to show off the fancy graphics on the most elaborate visuals the series has technically put together, but that wasn't enough to keep me paying attention. I was as emotionally checked out as I was mentally. And by the end, when Yasuke took out that last target, my thought was just, okay. Hell, finishing that, I put Mirage back in to finally play the free Valley of Memory expansion. And within minutes, I was hooked back into the gameplay there. And for a roughly 3-hour experience, I was rewarded with an ending so effective I was ugly crying. That Shadows couldn't elicit a fraction of the response of a free DLC is abysmal. I've had a long-standing disdain for the Unity fans who overpreach and overpromise what that game has to offer, and how hard they set false expectations for new players who almost across the board just end up disappointed. But Shadows had me the most wanting to extend an olive branch their way. Because even as misguided and poorly written and frankly baffling as that game is, it still feels like something. It still feels like there was once an attempt to have soul in here that got misguided along the way. Shadows feels like nothing. Shadows feels like there was never a glimmer of soul to put in it. Shadows feels corporate. I can't recommend it to new players. I can't recommend it to series diehards. And bluntly, it has me reconsidering how I play these games moving forward, so that I can still try to appreciate a series I have spent hundreds of hours giving active work covering here on my YouTube channel. At this point, if there is even a remote possibility another one of these games looks to be like Shadows, I am just going to skip it, not playing it, not buying it, Until the day comes, I cover it in a briefish history of Assassin's Creed. The fact that I'm going to someday have to rouse my brain enough to slog through this empty experience again is already daunting. This game is painfully a strong parallel for my own separation happening at the same time I played through. Something I poured deep love and care into since my teenage years, giving no regards for my interests or desires, instead dictating what I do, how I do it, for how long I do it, leaving me nothing out of the experience for a dull, hollow ache, and making the warning signs more present in hindsight was excruciating. Bluntly, I know Ubisoft isn't listening to me, as much as I joke otherwise in the main videos. Bluntly, I don't even know if there's a way to make Ubisoft listen to all of us, considering this late stage of capitalism already dive-bombing into neo-feudalism as it is. I am just going to be devastated if the day comes where I finally have to set this series aside to escape their abuses, too.